Okay, I'll check to see if anyone's logged in. Hi, and welcome everyone. Happy September. It's hard to believe it is already September. I'm Susan Greeley, the National Director of Wellness Services at Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. So for all who are logging in now, just joining, we always start by taking a couple minutes to give people time to get in. So as I do that, I will mention, as usual, there is a Q&A as part of tonight's wellness webinar, and we would love to have plenty of questions, and you can submit them at any time during the presentation or even during the discussion, and the Q&A section at the bottom should be at the bottom of your screen on Zoom. So please do that. And we will also be emailing out a recording of tonight's webinar with some additional SENS offers and resources and reminders. That'll go out tomorrow, so be sure to look for that in your inbox. Okay, I'm checking the time. We'll wait just a few more seconds. I like to give people a chance to get on. And yeah, so one more minute. Again, I guess I will go ahead and get started because we're at that time and want to be mindful of that. So again, I'm Susan Greeley, the National Director of Wellness Services at Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. I run the SENS Wellness Program, which focuses on our 4 pillars of health: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management, for any of you who are new to this. And once again, thank you all for joining me this beautiful September evening. I'm happy to be back and be connected to you all. And for those who are joining for the first time, I like to start by saying that these wellness webinars really are intended to educate and support our members. So with them, it's also my goal to empower and inspire everyone to make positive lifestyle choices and truly improve their well-being. And that's even more important now since COVID, which we all realize. So over the past 6 months, and even over the summer, I've had a lot of time to think about this and recognize that we've gone from this initial phase of acute stress to what is really a chronic stress situation. This is a very real and big issue for all of us, and it's why I wanted to take the opportunity tonight to talk about what health and a state of well-being means to each of us. How can we ensure that we work on that and supporting our own well-being in our daily lives? And it's gotten very complicated and tricky. So to that end, I'm very pleased to have Dr. Michael Finkelstein back with us. He has been here before. And so we're going to be talking about this topic, kind of reframing how we look at health. So first, a little background about Dr. Finkelstein. He is also known as the Slow Medicine Doctor. He is the author of a book entitled Slow Medicine: Hope and Healing for Chronic Illness. Dr. Finkelstein does provide tried and true solutions for healing individual patients and the medical system as a whole. He's the founder and medical director at Sun Raven. That's the home of slow medicine. And it's a healing center located on truly a bucolic farm in Westchester, New York. And that's where he does practice his principles of slow medicine. And he supports the movement for a higher collective consciousness for all beings. So with that, I'm extremely happy and excited to turn things over to Dr. Finkelstein.
Thank you, Susan, very much for the introduction, and Sean and the Connolly family and Castle Connolly itself for giving me this opportunity to talk about my work and help people. That my mission really is, as a physician, started off as thinking that I would help people the conventional way, which is come into my office, I give you a shot, I look you over, I give you medications, I might put my arm around you and give you a sort of a gentle hug and support. And medicine worked that way, I think, pretty well, interestingly enough, even before a lot of the technology and the sophistication. But we're in a phase of life that I think we've generally recognized that, as good as the medical system is, that we probably need more than that. We need to take advantage of the medical system as best as possible. And we need to learn to take better care of ourselves. Clearly, the world is throwing all sorts of things at us, and we don't even necessarily have to leave our homes anymore to find stress. But now, certainly all around, we're immersed in the fire, literally speaking. And it's not so easy to keep your head above water. And it's confusing, as Susan said, as far as all the information out there, a lot of which seems contradictory. And so again, my work evolved in response to what I saw, which was that we need to connect some more dots. Good physicians, doctors, healthcare providers are really essential, and maybe is the center foundation for when we get really sick, and may be helpful for us to prevent illness. But I think the question about health is broader than that. And so that's what I want to talk about today, because I want to share my views on health to help you broaden your own, perhaps, because I think that will offer you greater potential, not only to stay healthy, as you define it, but to be truly healthy in all ways. This, by the way, is me on my farm, in case you want to know where I'm coming from and what it looks like behind me and what kind of world I imagine living in. In fact, I do live in this type of world as you do, but I'm not immune to all the same situations that you are either. So I speak from the same personal point of view as you may yourselves recognize, which is, as beautiful as some things are, we're not feeling as sure of ourselves as we used to be. But if you want to reach me through this talk or after this talk, here's some contact information. As Susan said, these slides will be shared, and so you'll have this in your notes eventually. And I will welcome not only questions tonight, so please, as Susan directed, write them into the chat or the question and answer section, because we're going to spend a lot of time today with the questions, as opposed to me just giving you a presentation. And but after the fact, as some of this sinks in, if you want to reach out to me, I am more than available and interested in following up with you. So here's how I would start. And this is what got me thinking when Susan said, Michael, would you like to come back and talk about something else? Last month or two, we spoke about sleep as a center point for a healthy way of living and a metric to see how we're doing. But in thinking of the next subject, this question has been popping up a lot around me. In fact, I write a monthly newsletter. I call a moon letter because I send it out on the morning of the new moon every month. The next one will be next week, by the way. If you care to sign up, you can go on my website for that. But this question I wrote about a couple of months ago, and it got a lot of response. Actually, a lot of irritated responses, meaning people were not happy with the question. Healthy people are dying of COVID. When we're hearing that in the news, we're hearing about young people who are getting sick and dying, and that they were healthy. And you could ask yourself, you might accept that on face value. Yes, they were healthy. But in my way of looking at it, healthy people don't get a virus that most people survive easily and die. So though there are a lot of people getting sick with this virus because it is a potent one and it's an important illness, the fact is most people should get it and get well. The people who are getting it and not getting well, the question has to be asked, are they really healthy? What irritated a lot of people, and I want to start here because I recognize the sensitivity, is who am I to tell you, looking at you, you look good, that you're not healthy? What do I mean by that? And how dare I suggest that there's something wrong with you? But I'm really not trying to do that because I'm not the judge of this. I think what we all care about is that we are healthy. We don't care what somebody else has to say. And it's nice when our doctors say you're healthy, but what if your doctor doesn't see everything and is what they see looks healthy, but what they don't see, they can't even comment about. So the general message that you're healthy, even when the information may be incomplete, is the issue here. And I want to go over with you where the areas to look at might be critical, because the typical measurements of health, your blood pressure, your heart, your blood sugar and your metabolism, your blood counts, your liver function tests. You know, these crude measurements, and they are relatively crude, that doctors do routinely, are bits and pieces of your overall health, but they're a small percentage. They're the simpler, more visible, more accessible ways of assessing health, but they don't necessarily define all of what health is. So I want to pose this question without aggravating people, but I do mean it to be provocative. I want you to think to yourself, am I healthy? Am I at risk for getting an infectious disease like this and succumbing? I know you care about that. So we need to define health, because if I ask the question, you know, are you healthy? Then we need to really be on the same page with regard to that. And so a conventional definition of health, as I was alluding to, is that if I'm a doctor or a health practitioner and I look you over, I examine you, I do your blood work, and I don't see anything wrong with you, well, then I declare you healthy. So you are free of apparent disease. How reliable is that? That's a really big question, because as most people know, sometimes they go to the doctor or they have a friend who went to the doctor and they had a normal checkup and 2 months later they get a bad disease. Were they not brewing that disease 2 months earlier when they were told they were healthy and normal? We all know this happens. And so what doctors are able to do, as though it's very good and a lot better than it used to be, isn't everything, and therefore it may not be enough. A more holistic definition of health, it has nothing to do, or it has something to do with your physical body, but it has to do with the state of your being, that you are generally well. In fact, we know people could have diseases and they are really well. People can live long lives with diseases. They can have long, productive, meaningful, happy lives with disease. And so to me, a holistic definition of health is more inclusive of all the states of being, but focuses primarily on the state of being that is a good one. Not I'm alive for 99 years in pain, aggravated, and feeling like I'm dying for the last 30 of them. That's not obviously a good state of well-being. It's probably not health either, but I could still be alive for a long time. So as I'll say in a few minutes, longevity isn't necessarily a good, sort of indicator of health either. The holistic definition of health then is marked, to break it down though, to two things. One is the ability, you are in a position to live a meaningful life, and that you are functional, that you are able to get there. So let's say you have a journey you're on, and you know what the destination is. And let's say literally you have a journey. You're planning to go from the East Coast of the United States to the West Coast of the United States, and you're going to go by car. Well, so you know the routes you can take. You can take multiple routes. You may even go one way and then decide to change your actual route and itinerary and go a different way. But if California is your goal, you can get to California any number of ways. You have that in your mind, and you can get there. And you can get there in a Ferrari, and you can get there in a Ford. There's two different vehicles. One looks a lot better, a lot sexier than the other, but you can still get there. So how it looks, how fast it drives, how attractive and interesting it may be, isn't the same as being able to get you to the journey. So the holistic definition of health is the ability to live a meaningful life and enough functional wholeness to get there. Whatever car you have has 4 tires that are inflated. Going further, I want to make sort of some obvious other points, which is not a typical part of my conversations with my clients' patients, because it's really not always positive to say it this way, but all healthy people, no matter how you define it, will die eventually. So death itself isn't a fair way to measure a success of somebody's life. If all of us would be failures under those circumstances. But what is more important is how we lived our lives and what we were able to accomplish while we were alive, even if that's a very short period of time. Of course, it's sad when young people die, because we think to ourselves they didn't have enough time to live fully and do a lot of things. But the quality of that person's life really is not the same as the quantity. And if quality is very high, quantity is less important. Not that they're quantity is not important, as in the next part of this, which is it would be nice to live a long life, but it's not the sine qua non. It's not absolutely required of health, nor is it the absence of disease sufficient to live a life with meaning. I could tell you a number of people I've taken care of who are really free of anything I've ever been able to determine as a medical doctor as to a condition, but I can't say that they're happy. I can't really say that they're healthy, because while their body is okay, a large part of what I would say constitutes a good life was not in place. So the goal is not one or the other, just to make that clear, but both, right? Wouldn't it be nice to live a long, happy, healthy life, meaning full, and get to a goal and have a meaningful life? And in fact, based on the work that I have done, the research I have done, and the book that I've written, Slow Medicine, is about doing that. It's about integrating approaches, weaving together the disciplines of work in the body, in the mind, in the spirit, in our social lives, with our environments, in context, and to try to pull all of those things together for the synergy that they can produce to live the best life possible. As an aside, going back directly to the question of COVID, that's how I think you're the most immune. When you're in that type of shape, that's when you're going to be able to get this virus, if you do, and easily let it roll off your back. That, I think, is the focus. And I really believe that's important. There might be supplements to take. There may be a better diet for you. There might be medicines that could be offered. But the core of what you can do, listening to me now, planning to do tomorrow and for the next week and weeks of your life, is to integrate aspects of your life to create a whole that's functional. So the corollary to that, counterpoint to that is, if you pursue just your physical health and you don't consider the other aspects of your life, you're taking a chance. And this is where I get a lot of questions. And I'm going to predict that most of the questions offered today are going to be about the physical body: diet, nutrition, supplements, medications, things like that, as opposed to my relationship with my spouse, my aging parents and the stress that that's causing, the fact that I'm struggling in my work to have work to begin with or have work that I enjoy. I'm not sure what happens after death, so I'm a little worried about that. If one just pursues the physical body, and those are the questions, which I understand, and as a medical doctor, that's the ones I get mostly, I do think we miss many opportunities. And I think I want to just try to shift your attention to these other areas, not giving up on the body, but to balance it better than most people are apt to do. In particular, there are many occult diseases that are associated with the imbalance in those other areas. And they produce inordinate stress on the body through subconscious forces. I'm not talking now about just toxins in the environment. I'm talking about negative thinking. I'm talking about bad dreams. I'm talking about anxiety. These are things that are occupying mind space, but they have direct effects on the body. And this is why these two things are linked, that your physical body responds to all those things. And if you overlook the other areas, you don't pay so much attention to them for whatever reasons, you're missing opportunities. I want to direct your attention to pulling it all together. So what we need to do is we need to be very careful not to understand that we assume we understand the body by just listening, and I say this with respect, to conventional doctors or to the news media who's reporting to us what conventional doctors are saying or not. Because I believe their worldview is relatively narrow. And while they may be accurate in many of the things that they say and deserve respect, we have to be careful. And what's inundating the airwaves now is messages that are restricted to the physical body. And they're producing so much fear and anxiety that itself is another disease. And they're not helping us with that. So tonight I want to help you with both, not just one, not just the other. So my vision of health and how you put this all together is you think about the project of your well-being as occupying these 7 spheres. But this is what I mean when I think of health is that somebody's vehicle, let's say you've got 7 tires, is inflated in all 7 of these areas reasonably well to get across the country. And I'll talk more about these. So the question, are healthy people dying of COVID? And what I think we can get from what I'm saying is, no, there seems to be underlying conditions for those people who are getting sick and dying. Though they may have been called healthy, perhaps the application of that word in those cases was not the best. What was missing is the fact, because we hear a lot about underlying conditions, and we know that there's certain obvious underlying conditions like advanced age, multiple medications, heart disease, lung disease, diabetes. Those are the obvious underlying conditions. But are there other underlying conditions, some of which may not be known, that are contributing? And that's what I want to speak to you about. So what are they? Well, so the underlying conditions to me fall into these categories. Putting it all together then, if you think about the project of health and the 7 tires, you're going to look to evaluate these areas of your body, mind, spirit, social, environmental complex, and assess them. And if there's areas for improvement, then that's what you can do. And that's what you can do differently, perhaps with more sincerity and more discipline than you have been doing. So as an example, because I know people want to generally come here to the physical body, this is how I would break down an assessment of somebody's physical body. Not do you have diabetes, not do you have high blood pressure, not are you on lipid lowering drugs, did you have a heart attack already? But I would ask these questions. What's your inflammatory state? How's your energy? Are you in a state of metabolic balance? Tell me what you eat and the quality of your food. Have you perhaps accumulated toxins? Are you resting enough? Are you moving enough? Is your mineral, electrolyte, vitamin, and hydrational status in a good place? This would be how I would assess your physical body. And I know for fact, because I was trained in the medical schools that your doctors go to, that this is not what they're doing entirely. They may make a pass at all of this, but not in the level of detail that I think is required to really know. So these young people who might be dying of AIDS, interesting, slip there, but dying of COVID, may have more stress than as a parent. They may not have been eating well for 26 of their 27 years. They may have been loaded with toxins. They may not rest well. They may not move. Their electrolyte mineral balance, their vitamins may be deficient. They may have inflammation. Their stress levels may be very high. Doctors can't see that yet because their liver function tests and their kidneys and their blood counts are all normal. And they look good because they're 25 or 6 years old. That doesn't mean they're healthy. And so this is the assessment. So all of you deserve a better assessment in this regard. And that's the physical side. If you take the next 4 categories, the mental, emotional, spiritual, social, environmental, that's what I hope you're going to ask me your questions about tonight. Because I think the physical stuff, quite honestly, as interesting as it is pretty obvious, frankly. To me, it's pretty obvious. But I can answer the questions. I'm not going to turn you away. But I want you to think about, how do I assess my mental, emotional state, my spiritual well-being, my social circumstances, and this environment? These are affecting me significantly. Is there ways I can improve that? Because if you do, and you work on the physical stuff, which I know you're already probably doing to some extent, that's when you improve the quality of the different areas of this wheel of health. And that's when I think you're truly healthy. So that's the image, and that's the presentation. And so Susan, now I call you back to, let's talk. Let's field some questions. Let's really discuss this in more detail with more specifics, because I think, the presentations are always nice, but then it gets people thinking, it gets some people stirred up. And I want to be able to explain some of this with practical answers.
Hi, I'm back. Okay. Do you see me?
I see you.
Okay. I think if you close, I don't see myself. That's fine. There, maybe I'm back. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's definitely a time to be thinking differently, and mindset is a lot. So the questions are coming in. We'll start with one, and this is very important, and that's why we're here. So some people, to stay healthy, they do, as you know, have to take medications, and those medications have side effects that do affect thoughts and create other disturbances. So side effects of medication. How do you address that to stay physically healthy when that's impacting your mental functioning?
Yeah, well, there's two groups of medications, those you need and those you don't need. And I'm not being facetious.
That's true.
There are a lot of medications people take where they could, quite frankly, address the symptoms for which those medications are being used in more holistic ways. And I think part of the answer is a question, which is, have you done everything you can within your power to address the symptoms for which you got those medications? So as an example, let's say you have indigestion, and you're given, a drug to reduce the acid in your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the drug may work really nicely, and a lot of people know these are wonderful drugs sometimes. But if the question is in the back of your mind is, I don't really want to be on medications as much as possible. Eventually, I'll be 80 and I'll be on 8 medications, and I'll have interactions, and that'll be a whole nother problem. So let me, people ask me all the time before I even went back to school to study integrative medicine, do I really need this stuff? And is there an alternative? There is an alternative to a lot of those medications. But it takes a sincere effort to address the conditions like your diet, like your lifestyle, things that people want to do, but, and have a hard time giving up. But there's room for improvement. I think most people have to admit there's room for improvement. And if they get just some good advice and some good guidance and support, they probably could do away with a lot of medications they don't need. There's that other group of medications which without, you might die. So you need that medication. There's a middle group of medications, though, which are medications meant to prevent diseases in the future. And that's where I think the more difficult question answer is. So these are medications like for your cholesterol. You're not going to die if you don't take your Lipitor today. However, you can die of a heart attack a month from now or a year from now. And so the intention of a medication like that is to prevent that disease. Does everyone who takes that drug need it? Meaning they're absolutely certain to get that disease? No, the answer is no. Maybe a small percentage of people actually need it, but it's hard for doctors to figure out who's who. So they give a lot of these medications to more people than absolutely need it. If it were me, I would say, well, then I'm going to use the same strategy that I might with minor medications on the major ones. I want to prevent disease with healthy, holistic lifestyle strategies as opposed to medication. Mm-hmm. I think the answer to the question then is do better. It's do better for yourself. Mm-hmm. It may not be a simple swap of a supplement for a medication, by the way. People like pills because it sort of takes out the work that's required. But I am emphasizing the fact that if this is your goal and this is your desire to get to California with four tires inflated and enjoy the journey, it takes some work. There's no easy way to do this. I wish it could be. I would certainly give it to you. But I know there is a way to do it, and there's a healthier way to do it. And there's a way to do it with less fear and anxiety. And ultimately, the disciplines that go into that type of self-care uplift people. They feel very good about themselves.
That's right. Can I add to that? This is specifically to this member who asked this question. And you may not know that health coaching is part of your membership. And so in particular for this exact issue, because it isn't a quick fix, there's no, I'm going to highly recommend you reach out to me separately and we could continue that, because this is something that and that applies to not just this one member, to so many people. So I really want to say that that's why the support is here. And yeah, okay. So I hope that helps. And the next one, this is kind of a subject back to health coaching and talking to so many people on a daily basis. I wrote in my notes here about detoxing from media. So this is really relevant right now. So this person is asking, do you watch the news? Do you read the news? How are you responding to the stress of the upcoming election? And I'm going to throw in there, like, how do you manage this whole media mess, I'll call it? It really triggers a lot of stress and anxiety in so many people.
Right. That's a really good question. And yes, I do watch the news. I watch the news for two reasons. One is because people ask me this question, do I watch the news? And I want to say, I want to know what people themselves are experiencing, because I am also a health coach, right? So I'm also giving people advice about how to deal with what's out there. And
Right.
the news is out there. The news is reporting what's out there, whether it's accurate or not, hyperbole or not. It's still part of what people are dealing with. And so I take it seriously for that reason. I don't necessarily believe it. I don't subscribe to it. The way I deal with it personally, and what I recommend people deal with it certainly, is to have a coach to help them interpret the news, who they rely on more heavily than the news media itself. Now that coach could be their doctor. That coach could be a health coach like you, Susan, who is part of their medical network. That's really valuable. The news is often spinning a lot of the data. And even to be quite honest, a lot of the data that physicians have access to is also, I won't say spun, because that sounds almost intentional, but it's affected by the bias sometimes of examiners, sometimes by the agenda of the sponsors of medical research, and even the desire of the interpreter to have a certain way of prescribing their recommendations. There's a somewhat of a subjective element to all advice. But what's most important is that you have somebody to go to that you trust. So the answer to the question is two-part, which is have other people you trust more than the news to bounce the news off of, so that you can feel better about the array of worry that you may otherwise have to deal with on your own. But the other is think about the ultimate source of information, the ultimate goal of life. And this gets to another question that I'm seeing on the board, which, if you don't mind, that I'll sort of advance to, because I think these things are related. Somebody wrote, and I'm going to read it, Susan, I hope it's okay. The New York Times publishes almost daily the obits of COVID patients. Many of them have led meaningful lives, described in all aspects of your wheel, yet still died relatively young. How should we think about them? And I think that's a beautiful question. It's because it really gets to the heart of the issue of our lives, the meaning of our lives, the value of our lives, and why are we here on this planet and this earth with our consciousness. Is the only way of assessing a healthy, the only way of assessing a good life is longevity or even meaning. I don't know. I think that, quite frankly, I think there's a looming question that's spiritual around all of this, which we may not really have a full grasp of, that we're striving to understand. We can't answer all these questions. It's possible that some of these young people are dying not because they did anything wrong. That's why people got upset with me, that somehow people were doing something wrong. They may have done everything right. It may have been their time to die. I have no idea how that works. I don't know that it does work that way, but I don't assume to know. And I think there's got to be room for the possibility that this is a mystery. This whole thing about life is a mystery. And the best we can do is to take care of ourselves in a way that gives us the best chance of having a meaningful life. And to see the beauty in all of this in some strange way, even the challenges, because we are faced to reflect on what we can do better. And if it wasn't for challenges, we wouldn't be pushed to do better. And so I see some of this as inspiration for us to really get a grip on what it is. It's not to live 99 years and check the box and then where do we go? We're just happy and successful. I mean, we'd like to be around as long as possible. I really want that as much as anybody. But what I really care about is to be a good person every day of my life. I'll share, when I was 20, my best friend, two friends were killed in a car accident. And I wrote this in my book. So I was 20, I was driving. My girlfriend of 2.5 years and my best friend were in the car and they were killed in that accident. I had to learn from a very young age that I didn't have as much control as I thought on the subject of living. I obviously felt very responsible because I was the driver, though it was really an accident. But that was the thing. It was no explanation for it. There was no good explanation for it. This is a mystery. I can't tell you I know the answer. I can tell you, though, I have been affected, like many people, by the tragedy of losing somebody close who should not have died so young. What I can say in response, my yearning for helping people got stronger. And part of it is to help people deal with that existential part of this. And that's why I think the spiritual and our relational subject matter is really important when it comes to thinking about health.
Thank you. I think that was a beautiful answer, and I completely agree. So I'll read the next one. It's interesting. Our social networks, and this is a very big problem and I'd say issue as well. So our social networks have been disrupted and people are struggling with a lot of loneliness and isolation. What techniques or strategies do you suggest to help fill that gap?
Yeah. There is definitely social distancing that's taking place, physical distancing, and that's changed how people spend time together. And it may even, I don't even say this tongue in cheek. I mean, it doesn't mean that people can't be together, right? There's social media like we are right now. That's not the same for all people though. And I know that's not an adequate answer because the question refers to the fact that despite that, everyone knows they can pick up a phone. Everyone knows they can get online and it's still not okay for some people. So there's definitely been a change in the quality of our connection. I think the answer requires two things, which is to try to find another route on your journey. The road has been blocked. There's no question. Giving up is not the way to go, even though a lot of people feel deflated, maybe defeated. But perseverance here is really important. So trying to find new connections that are meaningful. And when that doesn't work so well, because that could be very challenging still, is you take the other view of it, which is, well, okay, so now I have more time and I have more time to myself. Is there something good about that? Well, this is the time to think about the existential question. Can I pray more? Can I meditate more? Can I be still and quiet? Slow medicine, this phrase in my work, is meant to suggest that we are moving too fast anyway. That's part of the disease of our collective social fabric. We've lost touch with the rhythm and pace of walking and of just getting outside and sitting by a pond and listening to birds. That doesn't seem for a lot of people these days who are saturated with wild entertainment to be sufficient. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of beauty in the songs of birds. And so that's right outside everybody's window. And I think the answer is to shift. To shift even the narrative of your story, which is you need friends to go out to dinner with on Friday night. That's a story, that's a narrative. I know it feels really good when you can do that, but maybe you can't do that now. So on Friday nights, you're gonna make yourself a nice dinner, you're gonna light a candle, you're gonna pick flowers outside, you're gonna bring them inside, and you're gonna pray and meditate and write letters to your best friends. And heartfelt letters, or you're gonna write poetry, or you're gonna read poetry. This is not gonna last forever. This is gonna be, I don't know, a couple of more months. It could be years, but it's not gonna be forever. Hopefully we stay healthy and well and we live long lives. And we actually are stronger when we're done with this than we were when we came in. We did not collectively wind up with this mess of COVID, with this mess of fires all over the West, of hurricanes and natural disasters, social injustice and all the problems that that's creating by accident. Now, as individuals, we may not be directly responsible for all that pain, but we got here collectively with a certain amount of inattentiveness. Well, this is a great opportunity to pay attention. And this could be the blessing of COVID. This could be the blessing of disasters. I hate to say it. I mean, they are, disasters are disasters for a reason. That means people are hurt, things are damaged. That could be indelible, and there's a lot of grief associated with all. But that's not the only side to it. There's another side. The whole life picture is a lot of beauty, especially if one can overcome the challenge.
Thank you. If you saw me smiling, and at some point I almost want to apologize because tears started welling up in my eyes. I thought that was absolutely perfect, the idea of that beautiful dinner for one. And even though you feel as if it's just for one, It's not. And so I beg people to, just in the coaching, Michael, to get outside, and it's not hokey, to convene with nature, to hear the birds, to be tuned in and connected to, you know, to more than just the physical, woe is me, I'm completely alone physically, right? And I just thought that was absolutely perfect. Thank you. And I think many people, like that, I beg you all, I implore you, get out into nature right now. And even if you are alone, that's very, very important. I hear the birds as we're talking right now and made me smile. I personally do find at least a friend, or I go for a lot of walks by myself, and it's pretty therapeutic. And I switched my own thinking of being so alone, that whole alone and wanting to cry many times, to this is absolutely perfect in this moment. And I'm so grateful, truly, for feeling, smelling the fresh air, the flowers, and hearing the birds, and really in this moment being present. And that takes me to, if any of you, a lot of you know me, or maybe you don't know me, I've had multiple webinars on meditation and mindfulness, and I really can't speak to that enough. It's so important, right? And then, we could probably talk about too, the whole spiritual practice. And all I can say, will suffice it to say, is it helps, and it's very supportive.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more question. Actually, I have two more questions, and maybe three. What is the downside of having a healthy lifestyle while taking medication for an ailment as well? So, like, is there?
These questions are wonderful, by the way. And again, I want to thank you for having me. You obviously have some great people as part of this organization and this network, and it's really my honor to be, to offer anything I can. What's good about that question, what I really like, is, quite honestly, there's no downside to anything if you're conscious. If you're aware of why you're alive and where you're going, and where you're going is contributing some value to, whether it's other people, the planet itself, animals, the divine, if there's something of importance to your existence, and you're just trying to keep yourself alive a little longer to be able to do that, that's your work, that's your mission in life. There's no way to measure that to supersede the impact of that contribution. So there's the only downside of doing something is if it makes you unconscious. If you take a medication and it gives you license to lose your mind every night in some practice, some physical, sort of sensational practice, and in the process you're literally unconscious, until the next morning. That's not quality of living. But taking medications is not the worst thing that somebody can do. But I think the other side of it is, you do have to, the healthy lifestyle that I think is central is the consciousness, is the awareness. Why am I alive? What do I really want to accomplish? Why am I important? And when you're important, you actually take better care of yourself when you know that. And so I think you wind up in most cases doing both. And that's pretty good. You sort of organize them together. What you don't want to do is get overly stressed by this project. You want to be able to live your life and feel good every day. So what are the tools? What are the ingredients, of this vehicle that are absolutely necessary to get across the country? And it's inflated tires and some gas. I'm not trying to be facetious, but it's not necessarily more complicated than that.
Right. And I'm going to point, you said this earlier in your presentation when you were talking about, even with chronic, and I thought this was such a key point, with chronic disease, you can still, it's like health and well-being is inclusive of these diseases. Let's say you do take a medication. So just also reframing it in that point, you can live, it's more about, the well-being can include the medications and chronic diseases. So in any case, that all-inclusive concept, I think, is really important. Okay, so this is an interesting question. You have relationship to the divine as one aspect on your wheel, what are called the 7 spheres. Could you elaborate on that, please? And does organized religion play a part?
Yeah, so the The answer is organized religion, just to start with the second half of the question, of course, could play a part. If the organized religion that you support or supports you literally supports your feelings of worthiness and helps you organize your thinking and your approach to your personal relationship with the divine. And I think most religions, in principle, do that. I think, though, a lot of the individuals who literally stand between you and the altar, which is let's say, the representation of the divine that you most readily connect to, the individual there could change, shape, and distort even your relationship, or confuse you. And I think the issue many people have, I believe, with organized religion is there's confusion. What somebody is saying in the sermon feels different to me and doesn't settle well with me with what I feel in my own personal relationship to the divine. And yet, if I don't follow what the preacher says, then I feel guilty. And when I feel guilty, then I feel less worthy. That's damaging. That, to me, is where organized religion can fail us. If in the process of you, with your heart, trying to reach the divine, you feel guilty because somebody else, some other human being tells you should feel guilty, I think I would try to move into a different position in the relationship with that person. You may still listen to that person and consider, like the media, what they may have to say. But you know best from your own heart the truth of certain things. And when it comes to the relationship with the divine, that's really primarily what I mean, is the truth you have in your own heart, what matters to you. It may be affected and influenced by the teachings of the religion that you're most familiar with, that you were raised with in your family of origin, or that you've learned subsequently, or, other things that have influenced you in that regard. But that it's still your relationship with the divine. It's not somebody else's definition of that, nor should it be anyone else's definition of health. If I'm a doctor and I tell you you're not healthy because you have diabetes, I've messed you up.
Yeah.
I messed you up. If I'm defining your health strictly by the fact that you do or you don't have diabetes or cancer or heart disease or something else, even if some of those are very serious and they could take your life, I am not at all helping you see the total health picture of the quality of your relationships, the meaningfulness of your life, the joy that you bring to others, the art you produce, the teaching that you offer, the family that you're raising. If I define your health by the fact that you have a blood sugar of 150, I am messing you up. I am not helping you. And so the same can be applied in our relationship to the divine. It's not for somebody else to tell us, not for another human being to tell us how we're doing.
Right. That's great. Thank you. Okay. Gosh, and that's a subject I could really talk about that for a very long time.
Yeah, that's a late night conversation.
Isn't it? And yes, I completely agree. That was wonderful, though. And the next one, I believe, is directed towards me, and I'll read it. What is one lifestyle? We can both answer. We're both coaches, so I guess, sorry, for both of us, we'll say. What is one lifestyle change that you think benefits most people you coach? And the one that, I'm sorry, the one that you see time and again changes a sense of well-being. Sorry, so did I get that out clearly?
Yeah, I understood it.
Me too. So you take a stab at that first, and then I have obviously thoughts on that as well.
I think what I've been sharing, this wheel of health concept, is to help people shift away from the subject that their physical body is the primary, if not the only, determinant of health versus these other areas. When people see that the project is inclusive of 5 or 6 other important areas of life, they have a better chance of getting there. So to me, this is why I keep emphasizing that. Within each of those segments, then there is a way to analyze how somebody is doing and giving them ideas about particular practices that they could adapt that, adopt rather, that could help them achieve that. But the first thing is to shift the definition of health to be broader. And that's in essence what we're talking about tonight.
Right. Yes. Okay. And my piggybacking on that, it's not a straightforward answer, and I kind of apologize. However, my overriding thought and feeling on this is also, when I mentioned you don't have to become a daily meditator, when I look at this as well, though, it's really about our mind and our mindset. And if you are somebody who catches yourself in any sort of negative thought patterns on a daily basis and negative self-talk, whether it be it towards your weight, your relationships, how you physically appear, people talk themselves out of things all the time. I can't exercise because of this, or I'm too tired, or I'm too overweight to do it. So getting rid of the negative thoughts and replacing them with the positive, and that is absolutely not easy, and it's ongoing daily work. And that's why when I talk about mindfulness and meditation, whatever it is, finding things that can support you and your mindset, I think is a really key aspect of your health. So, and then it seeps into, if you're somebody who doesn't sleep well because of your thoughts, if you're somebody who doesn't then exercise because you didn't sleep well, it's all interconnected. And then, so I hope that helps. It's not, there are no quick fixes with it. And then to actually make lifestyle changes, I really focus on small, and I say this repeatedly, small changes make a big difference. So start today or start tomorrow, and if you can focus on one positive aspect and then repeat it, I think that's how it leads to true lifestyle change, positive lifestyle change. That's my 2 cents. Okay. I think, all right, so this is, I like how the questions are kind of all over the place. I hope I'm not missing any in the chat. I have one final question. This has been really fabulous, and I want to thank everybody even before this last question. So this is an interesting one that I had emailed you in advance, Michael, about what do you think of these, I call it devices and trackers, monitors, Apple Watch, what was it, Amazon Halo, anything like that. There are a lot. Do you find them, are they really for kind of the young and tech savvy, or is there a benefit? Are they useful for seniors? I want to say people of all ages. What's your thought on, if it's a supportive tool, what's your take on it?
I think they're getting there. I think right now they're on a relatively superficial level in terms of the information they're providing people. So let's say they're providing you your heart rate, your blood pressure. Let's say even say some sophisticated implantable ones may even measure your blood sugar for people who have, glucose intolerance and metabolic syndrome. These could be really good feedback moment to moment in how you're doing. But I think what will be better, and I imagine the technology will continue to improve. And if we can get a device, which doesn't exist yet, though I was speaking to people who are working on this, ShareCare is the name of the organization that I know of that's working on this, which is to assess your autonomic nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is reflected in your heart rate, is reflected in your respiratory rate, but it's better assessed in how you're speaking. So the ShareCare app that was being developed, I'm not sure even where they are in this because it was very ambitious. And it's also a little bit of a intrusion, is to listen to your phone calls.
Oh,
okay, so it's connected to your phone and it's listening in, and it's got an artificial intelligence algorithm that assesses the stress and the tonality in your voice. And as you're speaking, it basically can determine, and of course this is within a range of normal, abnormal, but it can determine how you're doing. So let's say it gets to know you, and let's say when you call your best friend, you're happy or easy, whatever, it gets to know your particular, this is why artificial intelligence is used here, your cadence of voice, your tone, the words you use, the length of time you take to answer a question, everything else. Then you call your mother, and then it sees the difference between that conversation, that's your standard, even keel, happy one, with one that's sort of starting to reflect stress. And it can give you immediately on your phone through a message, take a breath, pause here. You just use the word X that triggers your mother because it knows your mother. And you would be better off. And it guides you it's sort of like biofeedback. It guides you in a way to assess how you're doing in a more functional way. It's not just metrics, it's not just numbers, but it's really assessing how you are doing, how you're behaving. Now that's what I said is intrusive because it's really eavesdropping on your life. It gets to know you because it gets to know you. And the only way it gets to know you is it's sort of living with you for a while with a computer. And I have mixed feelings about this, quite frankly. But to the extent that these devices can offer you feedback on your autonomic nervous system, your stress response, that I think will help you achieve the slow medicine state. The whole point of my work is to help people recognize when you're in the stress state of fight or flight chronically, and you use that phrase chronic stress at the very beginning of the webinar tonight, you're revved up in a way that is depleting you. It's already causing inflammation. It's creating systemic responses, which may make you more susceptible to all sorts of things that we don't want to get. And if the idea is to prevent as much as possible and to live as smoothly as possible so that our car doesn't just limp across the country, but it can really, glide nicely,
right?
You need some feedback that's functional. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think some of this could take us. Then again, I think people can naturally check in with themselves and learn to check in with themselves and make assumptions that when I do speak to my mother, I probably do get a little tight, and learn to practice, how to prepare for life. When I'm in traffic, I probably get a little, anxious. When I'm running late for an appointment, I might, these are things most people don't need feedback to understand is likely to stress them. And if we could manage the common life experiences more readily through these practices, meditation being a very potent one, we do ourselves a great favor.
Absolutely. I was thinking about that feedback creates the awareness. And so I see how that can be a very valuable, helpful thing. Just as a reminder, like I'm sitting here with my Fitbit, and when it reminds me either to take steps or take a breath, I listen.
Right. Yeah, so this is where it can be useful. For people who are tech, who are going to take that in, it may remind them to take breaths, to take walks, to move their body. I think those are helpful. But again, that's largely focusing on the physical aspects of our lives.
Right.
And I mean, it crosses over a little bit. When taking a breath is advised and getting outside, it's not just for your body, it's for a lot of things. But it's exercising a dominant muscle already. What I've been trying to get across, and I work this through in most of my communications with people, whether it's in a group like this or in individual sessions, I try to get people to shift their natural, easy attention on the subject of the physical health to other areas, because we generally do pretty well physically. And like I said, what we can do and need to do better physically is pretty straightforward. It's the other stuff that sneaks up on us, that's insidious, that I think if we attended to more effectively, we'd be much better off.
Yes, thank you. And I guess so that was it of the questions, and I think we can close by of course, thanking everybody for being here. Thank you. This was I just love talking to you. So I could continue this for several hours. But really to everybody out there, do reach out and hopefully this has created the awareness that there is support, and we're all in the state of this chronic stress and managing it together. And there is no one magic bullet or magic tool. And even if you think the person next to you is handling it better than you are, maybe not. Come into my house for homeschooling and you'll see. So in any case, really reach out and support yourself the best that you can. And again, thank you so much. I think that it's just invaluable. And on that note, I'm taking my long, slow breaths, and I want to remind people that too, right? It helps very much. So any final thoughts, Michael, before we say goodbye to everybody?
Hard to do this all the time, but it's a gift to be alive, and to be grateful. Yeah. Even if we're facing challenges, that we have this chance to try to figure it out. And I think there's some really great things trying to happen here.
Yeah.
And my hope is that people not only take care of themselves, but support others in that process. And we not just survive this period, this pandemic, which is affecting us on many levels, but we learn something really valuable that helps us and our children and in the future be in a much better state than what we were in before these things start to happen. Let's say, COVID specifically, 10 months ago, where we took for granted that we're okay. We're obviously worried. Let's hope that we can be much better off when this is all said and done.
I completely agree. And we're on the path to that. So don't lose faith. Don't lose hope. Yes. Thank you. This moment was a gift. Being here tonight with you was a gift. So thank you. And again, thank you to everyone out there. Stay tuned for my next wellness webinar. It will be on how food impacts our mental well-being, by the way. So little teaser. Okay. All right. Thank you again. And I'll talk to you soon. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.